Right, next up, African football. It feels like there's chaos everywhere at the moment, certainly for FIFA, but also in Africa when it comes to the African Cup of Nations.
Plenty more.
Let's clear this out. Where was it supposed to be, and where is it now?
So the tournament starts on January the 17th, so less than 2 months away. It was supposed to be in Morocco, but now it's not anymore.
That's true. Those facts are true. But why? What?
So the issue was that Morocco were not sure about hosting it because of the recent Ebola outbreak excuse me, in Africa. And they were worried about travelling fans and large movements of people coming into the country, that sort of thing that you would get with hosting a major tournament. They said they had their reservations and they'd still want to host it, but delay it a little bit while the Ebola crisis was getting dealt with. And CAF, the African Football Confederation, said, you've got to let us know, it's got to be now, it's got to be when it's supposed to be, or that's it, we're going to give it to someone else. And they missed a deadline, and they are now not hosting the tournament, and as a result they've been banned from that tournament and the next one, and fined around $20 million.
It seems
Bad day.
Slightly brutal and not at all sympathetic. Can we be a bit sympathetic towards Morocco? Was there substance, do you think, in your opinion?
I think there was. I mean, I'm by no means no expert.
Yeah,
I'm no expert
that,
on health issues, on Ebola, but it seemed to me like they had a legitimate concern, and the way they've been dealt with seems pretty draconian. I mean, it seems to often be the way that people are hit incredibly hard by sanctions when, you know, they didn't pull out for the fun of it. It's going to hurt them not being involved in this competition. It's going to hurt their economy not hosting it. But
Yeah.
it seems
I mean,
harsh.
you've got Guinea, Sierra Leone, and Liberia who are unable to play. I think for the last couple of months, are unable to play in their home games. So I mean, that's evidence there that there was quite a considerable problem, and also just generally quite grim for those teams. So I think Sierra Leone had a few games playing in Cameroon where they were abused from the stands, people chanting Ebola, Ebola.
Crikey.
So, you know, thinking about their welfare as not only from medical point of views, but been slightly oppressed in the nations that they've been played. Some nations have been approached saying, look, can we play our games here? And they've gone, look, we don't. Apologies, we'd love to, but we don't want anything to do with you. So it's a really fractured atmosphere, and it makes you worry. Not only we'll get to what the problems are with Equatorial Guinea, but it makes you worry whether this tournament is going to be memorable for all the right reasons, and whether the actual tone is going to be celebratory like they normally are, or whether it's going to be incredibly negative. I mean, what are your thoughts? Can we still actually look forward to a tournament in Equatorial Guinea?
I think obviously it's got this. There's going to have this hanging over it, and obviously it's not ideal. I mean, Equatorial Guinea did host it with Gabon in 2012, and they've got a couple of new stadiums since then. I think so they've got 4 stadiums. They can host it, but it's all a little bit last minute. And as you touched on there, there's been a lot of issues. Guinea, who you mentioned, one of the countries where there has been the outbreak, have actually qualified. They qualified today, I think, so they're going to be in it, and it's not the best way to sort of prepare for a tournament, and I can see why Morocco didn't want it, but there's sort of two sides to the coin in terms of they didn't want it because Ebola is obviously a deadly disease, but it can be contained if people don't move around, and so with a tournament you've got people moving into the country. But there's also the argument that they haven't done themselves any favours, and that I think they let Guinea play a home game because they couldn't play at home in Casablanca, and they're hosting the Club World Cup next month. Which has apparently got more travelling fans, even from Africa as well. So I'm not sure where they stand. But going back to, as you say, to the tournament, it's now been shifted to Equatorial Guinea, which has got its own issues. And
well, why do they get it for starters? Why them?
Well, it was kind of a case of it. Morocco said that it was decided Morocco weren't going to host it, and so CAF basically put the word out and said, approached a few countries, said who wants it.
Team email.
Pretty much using everyone in. So you had Ghana, sort of recent hosts like Ghana, I think Egypt, South Africa, all recent hosts.
Angola, I think.
Angola, yeah, I think hosted 2010. All recent hosts, all decided to decline. And Equatorial Guinea, who, as it happens, were disqualified from qualifying for this tournament early in the competition. In a preliminary qualifier, they fielded an eligible player against Mauritania, so they were disqualified back in July.
Yeah, this is a good get out of jail.
But it turns out if you host it, then you're in.
Well, it could have been quite a crazy situation where if they had not already been eliminated effectively if they'd been in the group stage and then been picked to host it, you would have had this odd situation where
right,
that group would have been robbed of a
Okay.
team. So actually, in a way, either that was luck or that was judgment, but it didn't disrupt the actual qualification process.
I just bet
too
when they got the offer, I just went, well, sure.
All right, I bet as soon as the phone went down, there were some celebrations in
Yeah,
Equatorial
we're in,
Guinea.
boys.
I don't believe the phone call I've just got. But from a coal point of view, they've got quite a strong infrastructure. They're oil rich as a nation, and they've recently hosted it. I think it was 4 years ago, which was deemed a relative success. So there's few risks involved there. However, and this does seem to be a bit of an ethically focused show, there are some controversies surrounding the nation and the government itself. Is that correct?
There are some issues. They've got a president who's been in power for 35 years, I think, and they're pretty high up the list of most corrupt nations in the world.
Yeah, some
Other
grim
than that-
stats. I mean, never mind football stats, but according to some independent statistics, 20% of children there die age 5 or younger, which is incredible. And 50% of the public there don't have any access to clean water. And this is a country that's incredibly cash rich,
There's a
one of the
huge
quickest
disparity of
growing
wealth.
economies in the world. Certainly, a few years ago, that was reported.
I think their GDP per capita, if we get a little bit technical, is I think a bit higher than Britain's or around Britain, doesn't it? It's a huge disparity of wealth within the nation. Having said that, in terms of a football tournament, they've got the infrastructure.
But shouldn't I mean, it's hard to answer this, but what do you think, Paul? Should ethics take a role when you choose a tournament? So this applies both to Qatar and this applies to Africa as well. Should that be a key component, or is that an irrelevance?
I'd like to think it should be a key component, but also you have to be very careful what you mix up here, because in a way you could say that how can Brazil host the World Cup when you have
yes.
that disparity
Good shout.
exists between immense poverty in the shadow of these massive football stadiums. I don't know whether the answer is not to give World Cups and big events to these countries. Human rights issues are certainly, I think, would be a good ground not to give a competition to a country. But then, China has been accused of all kinds of human rights issues, and it hosted an Olympics. You sort of always have these problems, and I wouldn't like to comment, to be quite honest. It's one of those issues I don't know that you can solve.
And the other side of the coin is that these tournaments, in theory, bring more jobs, more hope, a sport that the population are clearly passionate about. So yeah, it's a big debate, but you do hope that if there is a sort of a post-FIFA, that there is more sort of thorough discussion on this, and a key prerequisite is actually analysing that before awarding tournaments.